Hey y'all, welcome back or welcome to the Easton Homestead. Today's video I am going to discuss freshly milled flour, how to mill your own flour using a hand crank as well as an electric mill, and what types of flour that you can mill, and I'm going to try to answer everyone's questions. So this is the hand crank flour mill that I use. I got this one on Amazon. I believe it was $75. What it does is you fasten it to your countertop or a table. That's what that little piece is for there. And you're going to tighten it down so that it doesn't move. And then you're just going to hand crank your flour. You put it in the top and the flour comes out that round part, the middle part. It does a really good job. I'm not affiliated with the company that makes these. I just really enjoy the product. So first we're going to start out with some rye berries. These are organic. I got these off of Amazon, but next time I'm going to order them from Missouri Standard because Amazon robs you. When you're going to buy grains, don't go through them. Go through Missouri Standard or a local place where you can buy grains. You're going to pay twice as much on Amazon as you would through like Azure or another company. But that's who I use for all of my grains. I've had really good luck with them. I'm really pleased with the product. But these are my rye berries. Next, we're going to look at some spelt grain. I got this from Missouri Standard. It is organic. All the grains that I'm using are organic. They are a family-owned business and it's non-GMO and organic products, so I'm really happy with that. I would much rather support a family-owned business than a big corporation. So we're going to take a look at what they look like. I got 5 pounds of spelt and 5 pounds of einkorn grain, same place as their standard. They have drops throughout the country. I picked mine up at a local drop, and they do monthly drops, so I think that's really awesome that you don't have to pay the shipping. So if you order large amounts of grains, the shipping gets very costly. So that's what einkorn looks like. And last but not least is our hard white wheat berries. You can use hard white wheat or hard red wheat. Either one's fine. I just prefer the hard white wheat. These do better than the soft white wheat, and here's what they look like. So let's get to milling. I've got my crank set up. Sorry, my stand table is a little wobbly, so the video is a little wobbly, but you can see that the flour comes out there. And of course, the harder you crank, the more flour you're going to get. Some grains are easier to crank than others. Einkorn and spelt are a lot easier to hand crank than hard wheat or rye. But overall, I really like this hand crank mill. It was worth every penny. It grinds it up into a nice fine flour, which I'll show you here shortly. Here's just a front view of the grinder. You can see the flour coming out. I'm really impressed with this product. For the money, it is definitely worth it. So here we have our hard white wheat. What I'm going to do is measure it out and see exactly how much flour I got from 1 cup of each type of grain. So this was 1 cup of hard white wheat. And I got almost 1 3/4 cups of flour out of that 1 cup of hard white wheat, which I think that's pretty impressive. Next, we have our spelt. I'm going to grind this up real quick and I'll be back. So we're going to measure out our spelt in the same way. It was 1 cup of spelt grains, and we shall see how much flour we got out of that. We got about 1 3/4 cup out of the spelt. So 1 cup of spelt grains rendered 1 3/4 cup of flour. Next, we have our einkorn flour. We're going to do the same thing. We had 1 cup of einkorn grain. We got about 1 1/2 cups of flour out of the einkorn grains. And last is our rye flour. So we're going to see how much flour we got out of the 1 cup of rye. And I'm using a half cup, a measuring cup, if you're wondering. So we got a little less than 1.5 cups on the rye. So out of all the 4, the spelt and the wheat rendered the most flour per 1 cup, but still I think that's pretty good. We got at least 1.5 cups per 1 cup of grains. And you can see how finely this flour has been ground out. I'm really impressed with this little grinder. I've never had any issues with it. I've used it quite often, and it seems to mill any kind of grain with ease. And of course, like I said, like the harder the grains, the harder you have to crank. The spelt 9-corn was a lot easier to grind than the hard white wheat and the rye, but I did order an electric grinder, so it'll be here tomorrow, and I'm going to do a full tutorial and review on that. So I'm not going to waste this flour. We're going to make some bread with it. I'm going to save the rye for my starter that I'm feeding. I'm going to put in some spelt, some einkorn, and some wheat. And what we're going to do is we're going to let this flour sit in some water for a while, at least 30 minutes to an hour. That's called autolyse. And that's just going to give the flour time to absorb the water and soften up the bran a little bit before we add our starter in there. So this is what we're going to do. This is not my normal sourdough recipe. This is, when you're working with freshly milled grains, it's a little bit different than when you're working with a store-bought flour. So let's talk about nutritional value for a minute. With freshly milled flour, you're getting all those nutrients, the 40 of the 44 nutrients that you need in your body, you're getting it out of your freshly milled flour. Where if you buy store-bought flour, it's basically stripped of all nutrients, because as soon as you mill it, the nutrients start to deplete. So if you would mill flour and wait 3 or 4 days, it's not going to have as much nutrients as it would if you mill it and put it right into bread. So that's why you want to mill it right before you bake your bread. You're getting all those nutrients in, not to mention it tastes a lot better than store-bought flour. It's not bleached. It doesn't have any chemicals in it. It doesn't have, any added nutrients. All the nutrients from that grain is in there. So this is the healthiest form of bread that you can make, is with freshly milled flour. So I just added 400 grams of water. I meant to add 390, but I accidentally poured a little bit more in, but that's okay. With freshly milled grains, the flour is thirstier than store-bought flour, so it does require a little bit more water than the normal standard, like any of my standard sourdough recipes. I usually use anywhere from 370 to 390 grams for my freshly milled flour breads. Like I said, I accidentally put 400, but that's perfectly fine. I'm used to working with a higher hydration dose. It doesn't bother me. But you're just going to want to knead that flour and water. Remember, our sourdough starter is not in there right now. We're just going to let that water soften up the bran a little bit, because when you work with a heavier grain like rye or wheat, that bran can make the dough and the bread kind of dense. So we're going to try to get a nice, light, fluffy loaf out of these 3 different flours. So this is our little experiment here. I have never done the 3 different flours together. So now I'm just going to add in my sourdough starter. I'm doing 100 grams. Like I said, this is not my normal sourdough recipe. This is specifically for freshly milled flour. Normally, I just add my water, my starter, then flour and salt together. So, like I said, this is not the norm for my basic recipes. So this is totally different for freshly milled, and we're going to see how this turns out with these 3 different flours. So I'm just going to knead that in really well. Make sure that all that starter is equally incorporated into the dough, because you want to make sure it can feed off that flour. I found that using freshly milled flour in your starter really gives it a boost. It seems to really like that fresh milled versus like a store-bought flour. You're not really getting a lot of nutrition with store-bought flour. I'm not knocking it, not saying it's a bad thing to use store-bought, but if you want the maximum nutrition, fresh milled is the way to go. And really, the hand crank is $75. That's fairly affordable versus the high dollar electric mills that are $500-$600. The one I ordered is an affordable one, so I'm hoping and praying that it will be a good one. And I'm going to do a full review, an honest review with you guys on that one as soon as it comes. It should be here tomorrow, which I'm going to be adding it into this video as well. A frequently asked question when it comes to freshly milled flour is why is store-bought flour less nutritious? And that's because they remove the bran and the germ in order to keep a longer shelf life for the flour, and often it is also bleached with chemicals. And they do add in some vitamins back, but it's not the same as what you're getting from these grains, the natural nutrition with that. You know, they are trying to add back in nutrition, but you can't get better than, you know, Mother Nature. So, in removing the bran and the germ really does affect that. Yes, it does have a longer shelf life, but it's less nutritious. So, my electric mill is here, and we're going to talk about it a little bit. This is the first time have ever used it, so honest review here. It's pretty big. Like, they have different sizes. I think I just got like a medium size, but they have larger than this if you would want something bigger. There's the lid. You have to put that on there and like clench it down before you use it, because obviously you don't want flour spraying everywhere. The one thing I didn't like is that the instructions didn't really tell you like how long to mill anything. So, which I read that in the reviews. It has really positive reviews on Amazon. So I figured, why not give it a try? This particular electric mill was $75, which is fairly cheap compared to most mills. They are anywhere from $300 to $600. So we're going to see how it works. I'm going to put a couple cups of flour in there. I believe I put 2.5 cups of spelt grains, and we'll see what this bad boy can do. I'm really excited for this. Like I said, it had really positive reviews on Amazon. So let's give it a try. I'm just going to bolt it down there. It's fairly easy to like figure out. Like it's pretty basic. I mean, it's not super advanced or anything, but as long as it does the job, I'm happy. I will warn you, it is extremely loud. It scared the crap out of me when I turned it on. I do have the video muted for that reason. But yeah, it's pretty loud, and it will have like a burning smell when you first use it for the first time. I read that that's normal for this mill, so that should go away. So it didn't freak me out too much, but I let my grains mill for about 15 to 30 seconds. I didn't really time it, and let's see what it looks like. Wow, guys, I'm impressed. Like this thing does business. This thing is a beast. Like, I'm super impressed. I'm going to bill it for another 15 seconds just to get it extra fine, but I'm really impressed with this thing so far. Like, this is going to save me so much time, because the hand crank is great. It does a great job. It's just time consuming, where this was 30 seconds and it milled it down to a pulp, but I just want to get it even finer if I can. And yeah, so far I am really, really impressed with this machine. Really, really impressed. I am so excited. And you know, it's really affordable too. I mean, like I said, most mills, like the Nutri-Mill, the Mock Mill, they're $300 to $600, and that's a lot of money. It's a lot of investment, especially if you're not sure that you will even like freshly milled flour. You know, this is an option. It's affordable. It's actually the same price as my hand crank. It was about $75. So let's check it out again. Look at that. It's beautiful. I mean, it does a wonderful job. Like, and it does more than just berries. You can use it for coffee and spices as well. Like, look at that. That is impressive. I am super excited about this, y'all. Like, you have no idea how excited I am to have this. Like, it's going to be a game changer for me. The cons is you have to let it rest for about 3 minutes. Oh, and they did send a brush and spare parts, which I think that is awesome. You have to let it rest for about 3 minutes, if 3 to 5 minutes after using it for 3 minutes straight, which if it only takes, you know, a minute to mill your flour, it's not that much of a big deal. But there's my flour. I am going to sift it just to see like if it makes much of a difference. So let's go ahead and sift this and we'll find out. I also want to mention you absolutely do not have to sift your flour because what sifting does, it is going to remove the bran from your flour, which the bran contains a lot of nutrients. So that might not be something that you want to do. If you want to get all the full effects of the freshly milled flour, then this may not be an option that you want to do. But I've had people ask me, can you make your own all-purpose flour with fresh milled? And the answer is yes. You just remove the bran. Like I'm using spelt, but you could use hard white wheat berries and then sift it afterwards. So this little sifter, I got it on Amazon for about $10. It does a great job, and it didn't take me very long to sift this flour. I mean, just a couple minutes, and it really did make a difference in the texture. It's a lot softer now. But like I said, you don't have to mill your flour or to sift your flour at all. That is totally optional. You can use your flour as is with the bran, and of course, the bran has the majority of the nutrients, so that you absolutely could keep it in there. But there's just the bran. You will lose volume if you sift the bran because that's part of the flour. So you will lose some of your volume. You might have to grind more berries to get the volume that you're wanting. But look at that beautiful flour. It is so soft. Like I am just mind blown at how well this little machine does. I mean, for $75, it was worth every single penny. And I will link all of these things below in the description box: the hand crank, the electric mill, the sifter, everything. I will link it in the description. But so I milled some einkorn off camera. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to conduct a little experiment. I am going to use my sifted spelt flour, and I'm going to make a sourdough loaf. And I'm also going to take my einkorn, which I did not sift, and I am going to make a loaf with it. So I'm just going to let it auto-release for a little bit. I just put some water in there, no starter yet, and just let it sit and see if that'll soften up the bran and we can get a nice fluffy loaf. And I've also got my spelt. I already just put the starter and water in there. And we're going to see how they turn out, like with the bran and without the bran. Does it make a difference? And we're going to see what happens. I'm super excited for this. I'm always doing experiments with my bread because I think it's fun to learn, and you're never too old to learn. I hope y'all enjoyed this video. If you have any questions, leave them in the comments.